What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video today, and in this video we are Des Moines International Airport for the 58th airport update for the month of September 2025. It's a very full update, and there's also a slight change to the layout that I have here for the airport, since I did recently make the changes with the ongoing construction that's happening here. They've made some changes to the gate layout slightly to make things a little more efficient, as they have a couple of the gates, the previous areas, all torn up for the new terminal that they're building just across the way. So we'll start off with this pair of Allegiant aircraft. Always nice to get that full GSC setup. It feels much more satisfying knowing that I have enough sets to fill a diorama like Des Moines, for instance, and then Omaha is getting there as well. We still need maybe 2 or 3 more complete sets to really get to that point, especially for Omaha, but certainly happy with where the GSC collection is at as of right now. And I even have some now that I'm not even using at this point, which is great. So starting off, we have this Portland inbound A320 for Allegiant, arriving in as flight 472, and this arrived in at 2:45 p.m., 7 minutes early. So nice for Allegiant to have that service way out to the west, the Pacific Northwest more specifically, in the US. Wish we had something like that, but anyway. Moving over to Gate Alpha 3, we have this Allegiant 737 MAX 8-200, or I guess the 737-A-200, which just doesn't roll off the tongue as well as the original name. I know they moved away from the MAX branding for a lot of reasons. Some of them you can probably guess why, but also call it the MAX 8-200 here. In this case, this aircraft arrived in from Orlando Sanford as flight 2954 at 8:39 a.m., 15 minutes early. Allegiant keeping those MAX 8s predominantly out of their Florida bases right now, so Orlando, Sanford, Fort Lauderdale, Punta Gorda, just a couple of them really. I think mainly Orlando, Sanford is where they have them based out of right now, but I'm sure they will cycle through their different hubs or bases as we speak. Then move on to our lone Southwest plane, which Southwest does have some news that I will talk about here. Here's the Southwest 737-700 with the splits coming in from St. Louis, a service which I have talked about before that will be ending in the near future. This arrived in as flight 2074 at 11:46 p.m., which is 56 minutes behind schedule. So not ideal here for the aircraft that was previously painted into Louisiana 1 colors, and I have heard that they also retired Colorado 1. That's going to get repainted onto an 800. I think Louisiana 1, if I remember right, that's going to go on a MAX 8. So we'll have the first state livery on one of the MAXs, which it is interesting that they've repainted some of the specials onto the 800s when those are going to be retired within the next 5 to 10 years. So I don't know what their plan is with that. But anyway, as for Southwest itself, as I've talked about before, they're cutting several routes out of St. Louis. They have 11 networks that they're going to exit out of from that market. They're going to be down to, I think, about 30 destinations out of Lambert. And that does include Des Moines, which is going to end on March 4th of 2026. But they will bring back Chicago Midway the very next day, March 5th. So that will sort of fill the gap in caused by the missing St. Louis service. Great to see that adjustment made. And they said that it wasn't because the route wasn't performing well necessarily, or it's not, I guess it's not really how they phrased it. It's just part of the broader network adjustments that they're making, at least that's what they're saying. And obviously they're going to launch Knoxville at around this time as well, Knoxville, Tennessee. I've got a friend who's from that area, and I know he's very excited for Southwest to start service up there, so yeah, that will certainly be fun. You can do Nashville and Knoxville now, which is not going to be that long of a flight, but we'll see how that performs once we get to the spring of 26. But continuing on with the update, it's been a little while since I've had Frontier here. They just, every time I put together the flight schedules, they don't show up since they don't operate on those days that I get them put together. But I have them here. A320neo arriving in as flight 1678 from Denver, arriving in at 1:41 p.m., just a minute behind schedule. Not too bad there. And as always, this tripod does not go up high enough, so I will have to take you guys off temporarily until we get over to the other side when we check out the sea gates. But there's the A319 for the Houston Intercontinental Mainline service, arriving in as flight 1780 at 10:51 p.m. That will be about 23 minutes behind schedule. There's Concourse A, pretty full. Nice lineup there with the Allegiant, Southwest, Frontier, and United setup. And that'll bring us on over to the C gates, which as you can see, the gates are a lot more linear, if you will. They're a little more organized properly, unlike what it was before, since the markings I made back in 2021, that's how they were set up. But flight radar, at least on the Apple Maps satellite imagery that they use, I'm guessing that this has probably been out for a while, I just haven't really paid attention to it until now. But there has been a bit of a change with the gate layout, since obviously the two gates, which were C2 and C4, back behind the terminal, those are now gone as they're building the new terminal right in its place, and just a little bit off to the side there. So really the only gate that we have lost would be C6, since everything is now just, it's C1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it will be 7 on the other side there. 7A and 7B, those aprons are still present way down to the end, but otherwise everything has been consolidated into one single apron. Just like how Gate 3 was at Sioux Falls, as they are working on the terminal expansion, which I will talk about in the update next week. There's been some big developments with that recently, if you haven't followed me over on Insta. But we'll go ahead and start off with this American Eagle CRJ 900 at Charlie 1, which is parking over here. Usually this is an Allegiant or Delta gate, but today it's for American. This ride in from Washington Reagan is Flight 5388, a PSA service at 11:06 p.m., 39 minutes ahead of schedule, which is excellent. Let's see. It might actually be 41, I don't know. It's well ahead of schedule either way, so we'll just mark it down as such. Moving over to the Delta section, finally get room for Delta connection back since I have made the adjustments to the gate layout here, the C gates. We have the Minneapolis service for the Delta CRJ 900, Endeavour Air Flight 5064, arriving in at 1:52 p.m., 11 minutes early. And then the regular Mad Pup from St. Louis, the 717. This is flight number 2155 today, the mid-afternoon service, arriving in at 1:08 p.m., which is 12 minutes ahead of the scheduled arrival time. American section, once again, you see we've got a much larger mainline aircraft today. So there's the CRJ 700 for American Eagle, arriving in from Philadelphia. It's flight 5478, a PSA service. I did have seen the 175s, which I did talk about previously, the Embraer 175s on that service as well now. This arrived in at 9:08 p.m., well ahead of schedule once again. 9:40 was the scheduled arrival time. And there is the A321neo, which is super nice. Now, I'll also mention that Sioux Falls has gotten a couple of these as well from Dallas. So they're obviously upgauging these flights. They must be overselling them or something from what would typically be like a 319, and they have to send in the 321neo to compensate for that. But very nice to see one of these show up at Des Moines. This ride in from Chicago O'Hare is flight 2126 at 11:12 p.m., 16 minutes early. And this is one of the ex-Virgin America / Alaska examples, which American has taken over within the last 6 to 8 months, maybe 12 months now. It's been a while since they've gotten them. But very nice that they do get a second life with a legacy carrier, since, Virgin America, they were one of the first carriers in the U.S. to take the 321neo before Alaska bought them out and merged, and then Alaska obviously didn't need them for very long since they wanted to stay primarily as a Boeing operator, which, that proudly Boeing sticker is so kind of funny that they still had them on all the Boeing aircraft when they had all the Airbuses coming over from Virgin America. Our final aircraft for this update, we have the SkyWest House Livery CRJ 700, arriving in from Chicago as flight 6284, and this arrived in at 5:28 p.m., 11 minutes early. There's the Des Moines International Airport. And just a quick update as well, I did note that the Skyway is being installed for the new terminal. I believe it's from the parking garage to what will be the new terminal, or it might be the other way around, or to the existing facility right now, since they do have that parking garage open. Either way, looking really great, and we'll definitely be eager to follow along with more developments through the fall. And now it's time for a little roundup segment, which I'll try to consolidate here since I've made the update a little bit too long at this point, so I don't want to do every single service. I'll just do like a handful of them today since I don't want to take up too much more time. So we have the Portland service. That's going to end next month. October 26th is supposed to be the last day. It'll be twice weekly up to that point on the A320. I did have Orlando Sanford on there as well, so I'll highlight that. That will be 3 weekly through September, and then they'll add an extra Saturday frequency in October, and that will be a good mix of the A320 and the MAX 8s, which is great to see. Gulf Shore is still going strong for that October 3rd start, and then Fort Myers, that will be starting up here November 21st. That's another new service coming very, very soon. We'll be covering that in the November update. And then obviously Chicago Midway, as I mentioned, that will start up March 5th. That will be actually twice daily, so that'll be very nice. And why do they have a 757 listed on Flight Connections? Okay, I think that's a typo. It might just be one daily. So I'm just going to assume it's only one daily, and that they will need to fix that, because obviously Southwest doesn't have 757s, unless they're going to get some leased, and they're just going to operate them to random airports out in the middle of nowhere. So whatever they've got going on, I don't know too much about. Get out of there. Of course, the thing gives me an error trying to close out of that, which is delightful. But yeah, that's really just kind of the major highlights. And then there's also that Boston service, which I didn't have here. That will end in January, but that looks to be twice weekly here through the rest of the period, up until the next update. Monday, Friday service. And then American Eagle from Miami, that'll start up November 3rd. And then there's also, LAX, they'll start up October 6th for American. We'll be covering that in next month's update. So a lot of fun developments here as we move into the remainder of the fall season, and winter coming along the way, so things are going to get cold and things will be a little bit different. That will do it for this update this month. Very excited for what's coming for DSM as we move forward. With that being said, thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.